and welcome back to Logan Sounds Off. Today I'm going to be speaking about a classic stoner rock album released 26 years ago. It's July 2024 at the moment. And this is an incredible album, and it shaped stoner rock and just rock music in general a lot today. The band have released now 8 studio albums, been on many tours and done a lot of different music. But I'm going right back to the beginning with Queens of the Stone Age's self-titled debut album. This was only recently repressed by Matador Records. It was repressed as the 2011 expanded edition, but this is for 2024. This contains some bonus tracks as well, which is really cool, and just an incredible album. Really cool information. This is a 2LP gatefold, so a pretty nice album to have, and it just came out and you can buy it on Bandcamp. The link will be in the description if you would like to buy a copy of this. But I'm really excited to get into this. If you're new to the channel, you might not know that I am a massive fan of Queens of the Stone Age. I love their music. They're a really, really great band. And just have a really interesting tone. So to go back to this album, Queens of the Stone Age, their original, and now looking on their latest, In Times New Roman, is very interesting. And I'm going to get to that in a couple of seconds. But first of all, just to let you know on a couple of things, the album, Matador Records released this year, 2024. It was originally made in 1998 and released then. This is a repress. Make sure to check that out. Okay, let's get into it because I'm really excited to talk about this album. I'm a really big fan of the album. But this, as their first record, Queens of the Stone Age, you could definitely see the direction they were going in. Across the album, a lot of the tunes aren't as similar to each other, which is really interesting. You definitely hear the way they're changing, and when you heard Rated R, their next album, you can hear the direction they were nearly going in. They were starting to slowly change. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Joshua Homme, frontman, lead vocalist, guitarist. He does so much in the band. He is the one constant member. There is Josh himself, just in the middle there. He's a great guy, really, really cool. If you're a Queen's Stone Age fan, you'll know him well. And he's still touring and making so much cool music to this day, which is fantastic to see. But with Josh was that we were speaking about this first album because it is a lot heavier than the others. It's a very heavy, very vast, very deep album. And we were speaking about that a lot. And especially the progression between, you had Queens of the Stone Age, which was very heavy, Rated R, which was very heavy as well, but took on a lot more of a less bassy nearly. It was a lot less bassy, that particular album, and a lot less heavy. And then you went into something like Songs for the Deaf, which was very heavy but also very powerful, with Dave Grohl playing on drums. Then you moved into Lullabies to Paralyze, which was another very heavy album. And then you moved into Era Vulgaris, which was different to any other album they released. Like, really strange, but really, really cool. Different guitar sounds and everything. And you could really it was interesting to track the progression from album to album. So what I find really fascinating is listening back to this album, kind of listening back to how great it is as well, because I have this on CD, and it was a massive thing that shaped my music tastes. I would be listening to this a lot when I was younger. The thing about this album is that it really introduces Queens of the Stone Age as a band that's not going to stay in the one place. Queens of the Stone Age have adopted to the different genre shifts over the years, especially with their latest trilogy of Like Clockwork, Villains, and In Times New Roman. And I believe that took around 10 years to complete that trilogy of 3 fantastic albums as well, which came after, I think it was Era Vulgaris. So that was really cool. And Queens of the Stone Age, this particular album, is very unique and special and just well crafted, because this is what oriented Queens of the Stone Age into the future. This is what really changed them to be such an incredible band. So there are some incredible songs on this. There are some very deep, some of them kind of melancholic, how deep they are. Very heavy songs. Very bassy as well. The bass is incredible on this album. It's really, really good. All the instruments are, but I love the bass on this particular album, along with the guitars. But you start off with Regular John on side A of this particular album. And it's very, very heavy, very deep, and very different to anything you've ever heard before. Although you have these really cool guitars paired with a very deep bass and pounding drums, you also have this just reoccurring rhythmic beep sound as well, nearly. I'm not sure what it is, but it's really cool. And you have another beep as well on, I think it's You Would Know as well, at the start of side B, and we're going to get to that in a sec. But Regular John really opens up the album perfectly, and especially Regular John is something that's very fast paced in comparison to other songs in the album, like Walking on the Sidewalk and You Would Know, and other songs like that. Just really, really good. And that fast-paced tempo really sets the album up, and I really like that. A kind of gritty guitar noise, so like the bass, which is very loud, and that particular song is quite bass-driven with the guitar. The guitar has a very gritty sound as well, and they pair brilliantly together, the bass and the guitar. They sound really, really cool. And it has some really nice sounds, this particular track. The different nearly sound palettes and textures that you get throughout this album are very weird themselves. To make up the whole song, it's incredible. And a very good song. Regular John will be pretty loved by fans. So I like the way the palettes all mix together to make this track. I think it's really, really interesting. And that's why I find Regular John can be just a great an album starter nearly. And because of its fast-paced sound, incredible vocals, just really strange, really deep, heavy change of pace for the time. It's interesting. It's a song that stops you in your tracks, and especially at the time, I imagine if people were into Kyuss and they heard this, they were going full into Queens of the Stone Age as fans. They were very much into it. And I'm not speaking about this as in now, in 2024, this stands as a very unique, interesting, provocative, just revolutionary album in the music scene. My question is, what was it like 26 years ago? The impact that this album had on the community, and I was actually speaking about this to Josh Homme on the interview, regarding that this particular album affected the community so much. And it really led up to Rated R, which as well was another massive impact on the community. And Queens of the Stone Age are one of the bands that you hear on like vinyl. You pick it up on vinyl, you put on the deck and you listen to it and you're like, wow, this is cool. Imagine what they're like live. They really always had this different sound to them, which was really cool. So, I mean, this is a very impactful album, and Regular John is such an impactful song, and it's perfect to start it off. And then you've got Avon as well, and I love the guitar riff in this song. And it's really fast, but I love the highlight for me in Avon is I love the drumming, but the particular thing that I love is the drum fills to do with the chorus and the bridge and different things like that. I really like Avon for that. And I'd say Avon would be one of my favourite Queens of the Stone Age tracks, which for a normal band to have a favourite track is just normal. But for Queens of the Stone Age, in my opinion, there's so many different eras. Like, where you have like Clockwork, Villains, and in Times New Roman, you might have a favourite song out of that. But out of Errol Vulgaris and Lullabies to Paralyze, you might have a completely different choice. Their first album, Two Songs for the Deaf, the debut album, Songs for the Deaf, you could have a completely different favourite. So Avon would be actually one of my favourites out of their whole catalogue of songs. So the thing is regarding this album is that Regular John is a good starter, but that doesn't mean that the other songs are fillers or anything. I'm saying that Regular John, it really sets up for Avon to come in. And then the next track, If Only, which is another very popular Queens of the Stone Age track. And it's very different to the past two songs, Regular John and Avon. If Only is much more raw than the rest of the songs. It's not as bassy. You hear that more of that treble. So I really, really like that. And If Only is a very simple guitar riff. I love the tambourines as well. The power chords in If Only are very striking, very upfront, and very just nitty gritty. Really gritty, and that sound is really cool. And just share something where myself, I love Queens of Stone Age, but I also loved Caius, which was the band that Joshua Homme was in before that. But while I was really into Caius and I didn't know much about Queens of the Stone Age when I was about 5 or 6, the thing was for me was that I used to call stoner rock dust. I used to call it dust rock, simply because it sounded like there was dust, or more something that could adapt to the whole desert kind of thing regarding stoner rock. That desert rock is another name for it. Is that I thought it was sand, like sand in the amp, because it sounded gritty. It didn't sound clean, which is really cool. And If Only portrays this perfectly. So If Only is kind of a cool song for me to listen to. I really, really like this track. I know there's a lot of people who love If Only. But yeah, that's one of my favourite tracks in this album as well. And then you have Walking on the Sidewalks, where you've had 3 really fast-paced songs. The last one having tambourines and everything, and just really great vocals and everything. Next you have Walking on the Sidewalks, which slows things down a ton and is much more heavy. It's a very layered track, and it's kind of doomy. Like, I mean, I use that term, like, take that with a pinch of salt. It's kind of doomy. It's hard to describe this particular song. I quite like it, and it wraps up side A perfectly. The thing is, like, these particular, like, sides, they could be individual EPs and do fantastic. So to have, like, nearly the equivalent of 4 EPs in one album, like, to be released in 1998, just as, oh, this is our debut album, it's pretty fantastic. But Walking on the Sidewalks really just finishes that side off, like, perfectly. Really, really good. You still have that really heavy sound remaining. It's just, this is perfect, this song. So then you continue that kind of really heavy moment, except now it's slowed down even further into You Would Know. And this is back to the little beep and boop sounds that I was talking about, where there's little, nearly, I'm not sure, is it a telephone that's beeping? This would be very interesting if it was. And this is like my kind of, like, theory behind this. I mean, it's an awful theory, like, really bad. But this is my theory. If the beeps are from You Would Know, they could tie into the end of I Was a Teenage Hand Model, where you could hear, where you could actually hear a conversation on the telephone with Nick Oliveri, who played on this album. And Nick's actually here on the picture. There is Nick. There's Nick and there's Josh. So there's all the guys. But Nick was playing with them at the time, and I believe he played with them for Rated R and Songs for the Deaf Songs for the Deaf as well. He's if you've watched the No One Knows video, he's in that as well. He's a pretty good musician on this particular album. But that would be kind of cool if they both tied in. But You Would Know, I love the format. The format on, and I don't mean the production or anything. The production's great, don't get me wrong. But I love its arrangements. This is arranged perfectly, in my opinion. The effects, and when I say effects, again, I don't mean production, just the different sounds, like the telephone, I believe, was really cool. And also the drums are brilliant during the chorus of this, especially. I really like the drums in this, just fantastic. So after you have You Would Know, you have The Bronze. This is very exciting for me as a fan of Queens of the Stone Age. The Bronze is a bonus track. Yes, a bonus track. And there's a couple of songs on this particular release. I'm not sure if they're on the CD, but I've never heard them before. So first of all, The Bronze. The CD that I have. The Bronze. These aren't the droids you're looking for. And Spiders and Vinegaroons. I think that's all of them, yes. So that's really cool. But The Bronze is a really cool bonus track to have on the album. Although I do say this, I see why it didn't really make the cut of the original. Is it 11? Yeah, I think it's 11 songs. So I do see that. Not trying to put it down at all. The Bronze is a fantastic track. It's okay. I mean, it's pretty good. Like, for Queens of the Stone Age, it's okay. But for music-wise, it's pretty good. Like, it's a pretty good song. But, I mean, there are some songs that I prefer on this album. Especially the next one, called How to Handle a Rope, A Lesson in the Laureate. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But, anyways, moving on from that. This is one of my favourite songs on the album. Because it has some interesting dark themes, as we've been saying. It has that heavy sound to it. Really, really cool though. But yeah, I like that particular song a lot. How to Handle a Rope, A Lesson in the Laureate. Really cool. Now we're moving on to side C. There's so much music, it's great. And I mean, I love when bands do this. It's like, the thing is for me is that there are so many different versions of some albums. It's insane, and I don't like the way you've got some. For me, I love having the album and maybe having a deluxe edition, not super deluxe and everything. I like when bands repress an album, keep the original the same, but repress it, and one repress is a couple of bonus tracks. I love that, so that was pretty exciting. So now we're moving on to side C. Queens of Stone Age are the gift that keeps on giving regarding their music. So let's move on to now Mexicola. I'd say one of the most creative track titles on the album. I mean, How to Handle a Rope, that's a pretty interesting title. And Walking on the Sidewalks is pretty cool. But Regular John, I love that title as well. But Mexicola is another really heavy track and has amazing drums. The drum playing on this is insane. And I love the vocals on this song. Joshua Homme is a great singer, like fantastic, especially in concert. I will say, for me, although I love his singing on this particular album, and Rated R, and Songs for the Deaf, he's incredible with Mark Lanigan, another incredible vocalist, and Lullabies to Paralyze, I do have to say, I love his vocals on In Times New Roman, Villains, and Like Clockwork, as well as Era Vulgaris. And I have Era Vulgaris on vinyl, and I would have a lot of Queen's of Stone Age CDs. But I will say, I love his singing on Era Vulgaris. But he's very good on this album as well. So Mexico is pretty good for vocalist. The vocals on that. Then you have Hispanic Impressions. And this is a really cool instrumentally kind of. I love the instrumental on this particular track. That it kind of gives a little small break between a big album. This is a big listen. I'm not sure what the duration of this is, but it's a long album, and it's a big track list as well. You've got, like, they're not credits, they're actually tracks. So that's pretty cool. But no, this kind of like a little small break to a big album. I love that. That's really, really cool. It's not in any way light or anything. That's more towards the end of the album, surprisingly. It feels like you're coming out of a dark tunnel. Not saying it's a bad dark tunnel. It's a very surreal, crazy, super cool dark tunnel. But towards the end, you're coming to a lighter kind of sound. And nearly like a playful sound around where we have then Hispanic Impressions. But then you have You Can't Quit Me Baby. And this song is really good. And it blends into the last song well. But what I want to really delve into for the last little while is Give the Mule What He Wants, which is a very good track. And I love that. But before it is, These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For, which is a Star Wars reference, which is really cool. But they make droid-like sounds on the guitar, and to me that's just really cool. It's just fantastic, really fun. And I just think it's a cool sound to have throughout the song. It's very interesting. And again, I'm not sure. I think this wasn't featured on the original, because I believe there was 2 releases. There was one release that had this album cover, that had every track that's on it apart from the bronze. And there was another version that had an alternate album cover that was only repressed, I think, a year or 2 years ago. They're constantly doing it, guys. They never stop. On orange and standard black vinyl, which is really cool. And it sold out all like that for Bandcamp and stuff. But I believe you can still buy it somewhere. But that's the way it is, especially with the Villains 1.5 leaf green vinyl. That's not 2 records, it's not 1, it's 1.5. Really cool. So they've sold out a lot of records. But The thing was with that particular album was that it didn't contain Spiders and Vinegaroons and These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For. Now, it really hurts to say this. I see why These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For didn't make the cut. Because it's really cool. I love it, but I just don't think other people would. Because it's, like, looking from the outlook of another person, it might come across tedious, maybe experimental and unneeded for the album, which is sad because it's a good album. So this is the perfect place for it. This is fantastic on a Queens of the Stone Age repress for fans who would love to hear this. I love that. Then you have Give the Mule What He Wants. Fantastic track, really opens side D on a completely different note. And then that fades into Spiders and Vinegaroons, which comes into a kind of surreal, experimental zone. And These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For is experimental, but Spiders and Vinegaroons is cool. Then, what I just want to focus on for a bit is I Was a Teenage Hand Model, which Spiders and Vinegaroons blends in. This is, there's foot stomping in this. I'm not calling it a foot stomper. There's actually foot stomping in this. And this contains the phone call with Nick Oliveri. You've heard my theory. You can do whatever you want with it, but that's just what I think. It's probably wrong. I just think it would be cool if it was. I thought that would be really cool. But I Was a Teenage Hand Model. It's kind of weird and experimental, and towards the end it's just strange. It's cool. But it finishes off the album in a really interesting way. These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For, Spiders and Vinegaroons, and The Bronze are kind of experimental. The Bronze a bit less, so it's more bang in the middle of the album. That's where it was meant to be. It wasn't meant to be experimental. It just wasn't as good as the rest. But I Was a Teenage Hand Model was kind of like These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For and Spiders and Vinegaroons creeping into the original release, which is so cool. And I think this represents the album perfectly. So, final thoughts. My favourite track would have to be all of them. I love them all, but I don't really have a highlight. My least favourite, don't particularly have one. If there was one which I don't really mind, would probably be The Bronze. I mean, that's the only one. But I really love having it as a bonus track. That's really cool. But no, altogether, speaking to Josh about this album was so cool, and just learning about the album was really interesting. From him, the musician behind it, behind the 8 studio albums that is still just, all of these albums, this getting a repress 26 years after, and people buying it nearly immediately, and being repressed on CD and vinyl and t-shirts being made and everything, is really, really cool. And I love to see that. So as Queens of the Stone Age they've had a lasting impact on the community, and that's a lot to be commended for. They've done a lot of work as musicians, and I hope there's a lot more to come. With 8 studio albums, and I believe 1 official live album out now, it's really cool. It's just fantastic. So, as a band who have impacted the community this way and have been incredible musicians, revolutionary and just cool in their own right, and made some music that really is just about making cool music, Queens of the Stone Age are a 5-star band, and this is a 5-star album. But I do want to emphasize just how great of an album this is by just asking you, please have a listen. It's fantastic. And again, if you want to get yourself a copy of this, links in the description. Make sure to check that out. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this album review. I love this album so much, and I hope you do too. But if you did enjoy this video, please like it. It does really help. Make sure to share it. If your friend's a Queens of the Stone Age fan, he's maybe as much of a fan as me. And if you did enjoy this video, and if you do enjoy my videos, make sure to subscribe. It really does help. Thank you so much, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this album review. Goodbye.